Good morning, everybody. I am Wendy Nystrom, your host with Environmental Social Justice. And today's special guest is Mr. Samir Shah. He is the managing partner at Peak Sustainability Ventures, a wonderful company that I have actually done a lot of research on. Welcome to the show, Samir.
Thank you, Wendy. A pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for staying up late because Samir is actually posting from India. So my morning is his nighttime, so I appreciate that.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Now, could you please tell us what Peak Ventures is and how it got started?
Sure. So Peak Ventures is a sustainability-focused fund based in India and investing globally.
Okay.
We directly and through our associates have made over 17 investments in climate. And we focus on technology-led innovations that address some of the most complex issues on climate, energy. They include energy, water, food systems, and climate. These are the four verticals we operate under. And we try to work with entrepreneurs who are looking to solve complex problems. Our assessment is typically we use two lenses to assess our investments. One is it has to generate what is a risk-adjusted returns because this is a commercial investment and a venture. And in addition to that, they have to meet positive externalities in climate. And if either of these parameters are not met, we don't invest.
Real quick, so just so the audience will understand, could you explain what a positive externality is and why that's important?
Absolutely. Positive externalities, if I took a look at the term, is the consequence of economic activity which are borne by unrelated third parties. That is the broadly understood definition of externalities, and that can be positive and or negative. What I mean by positive externality, and to give you an example, we have a company in the portfolio called DrinkWell. And I just heard from them yesterday that we have, in the last year, served about 380 million liters of safe drinking water to citizens of Dhaka. And we have made a modest return as well. But the positive externality, if you will, is that we have made a reasonable amount of sort of return on what we have done. Plus, if you look at the objective achieved, we are serving people 380 plus million liters of water a year. And if you look at water, which is one of the four components of our investment strategy, safe drinking water today is inaccessible to over 1 billion people in the world, which is, we are living in the irony of having AI and having 1 billion people not have access to what is the most necessary resource. So the negative externality, if you will, which I take it the other way, if you say that the negative externality of, let's say, impure water, or for that matter, even air pollution, is health issues, productivity issues, mortality issues, quality of life issues. So those would be negative externalities, and provision of safe drinking water is a positive externality because in addition to the company making a return, we believe, providing a valuable service, which is a positive externality, impacting people who don't have access to what I would call a basic human resource.
Thank you for saying that. And I love the fact, so let me just pull that all together so people understand is, if you don't have safe drinking water, everything's connected, everything's a chain reaction of each other. So if you don't have safe drinking water and people ingest that, they will get sick. The next reaction to that is they go to the hospital, they have expenses, they have costs, they have resources that are getting used. Productivity goes away, they can't work, they can't make money for their family, and their family starts to struggle. So all of these are related and connected to each other, which is why we need to start addressing them now. And I don't think most people understand that there is, yes, over 1 billion people that do not have any access at all to safe drinking water, something that is, as you said, a basic human right. And the fact that you have invested and helped bring this company up so they can provide their product worldwide is amazing. That we need this, and amazing that you were actually providing the vehicle for them to do that.
No,
So,
thank you. I
yes.
think one comment which you referred to, which I wanted to perhaps elaborate on for the purpose of sort of the audience listening, is that in sustainability, there are no silos. What you do in energy affects water.
Yes.
What you do in agriculture affects water. What you do in water affects agriculture. What you do in agriculture affects climate. What happens in climate affects agriculture. So the reason we chose the areas that we want to work in, which is, as I said, new energy, food systems, water, and climate, is because they are all connected in a way of speak. And actions in one and inactions in one affect the other in a very meaningful manner, actually.
And very true. And let me point out this so everybody knows, you actually do have a background in environmental. And when we talk about ESG, most people we do talk to, they only picked up the environmental knowledge recently when ESG became popular. That's environmental social governance. That's basically when Wall Street got involved in the environment. And what you guys do, you guys actually have a vetted interest in sustainability,
Yes.
in the environment. It's not just about making money. It's not just about making as much profit as possible. It's about actually helping people. And most people do not have that background.
Well, I should just point out that I didn't begin with a background in the environment. So by background, sort of, I have an MBA from Wharton, and I'm a chartered accountant and a lawyer, and I worked in global investing in global markets for over 25 years. And since 2015, after moving back to India, our interest, or my personal interest, grew in innovative early stage companies to see how we could participate in the innovation all around us in India. And since 2018, which is almost 6 years ago, as you said, our focus has solely been on what I would call sustainability. So it is very close to what you're saying in terms of environment. But what I mean by sustainability is a question of using resources responsibly. And I use the word responsibly intentionally to say, look, we use resources responsibly to meet our needs, but also have the responsibility to live a better world for the future. And the key people who are not at the table, if you will, are future generations who don't have a seat at the table. But the actions that we take impact everybody. So in terms of the last 6 years, or almost 7 years now, we have built quite a strong inventory, expertise, experience, understanding of various issues related to sustainability, particularly energy, which we find is a core component. And the focus that the world has on GHG clearly is an emphasis to that. Though we would point out that, look, one needs to look at the full range of natural capital outcomes to achieve a better result, and not only GHG. But we have built this expertise internally, and yes, I would say that perhaps I would say distinguishes us from others who, as you said, perhaps are involved in this for 2 years, and we have done a deep study of these spaces and perhaps can talk intelligently about a lot of the issues. Not that others can't, but we have built this expertise, and it is reflected in the investments we have done and the people we work with, and the outcomes we are looking to achieve across the 4 areas that that I pointed out. One should also appreciate that when you say either you call it environment or sustainability or climate, these are complex issues.
Yes.
And the risk we also run is that there are certain investors and certain investments done in companies which then perhaps, if they're not well thought through on day one, fail, and then the sector is blamed that, oh, this sector provides negative returns. I would sort of, being in the space, sort of say that the opportunity in terms of making returns which are meaningful from a risk-adjusted standpoint, where you're not compromising commercial returns and achieving these outcomes, is very strong and will be so for the next decade at least. But one has to be careful about how one selects companies. And then to blame a sector when your personal or one investment hasn't done well is perhaps, in my mind, inappropriate. But we are seeing very good growth opportunities and opportunities to what I would call make a difference,
Yes.
which means that yes, it is about it is about profit. By the way, I also teach a course which is titled Sustainability, Business and Society. We have 81 MBA students in
Oh,
class, and there my charge is a cup of coffee with the vice chancellor. I don't, but that is a different bucket. In the company we through which we invest, I think that is based on achieving risk adjusted returns which are meaningful, and at the same time not compromising the climate related goals. And we find there is no inconsistency in achieving both objectives concurrently.
I absolutely agree. And I do wanted to go back to one of the first things you said, just so people really grasp that, is when you said our actions impact everyone.
Yes.
And just so people understand, when people talk about pollution, also called greenhouse gases or GHG, our activities produce gases, off-gassing pollution. This is not confined to borders. This is not confined to countries. This will happen worldwide. It will spread everywhere. So we are constantly affecting each other with our actions.
Absolutely.
What you're doing and actually, founding your company, going back to India and helping India is huge, because everyone's focusing on the US or Canada or Europe. Again, no borders, folks. We need this everywhere.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the most important things you can do.
Sure. No, what you said is absolutely correct. I mean, climate risk doesn't respect borders.
Yes.
Nor does it respect gender or your income. I mean, you perhaps, if you have higher income, you have better resilience. But the air you breathe, the water you have, and the food you eat, basically all of this are susceptible to sort of the same issues on climate. And the positive and negative externalities. I mean, as I said, your actions can be positive and or negative.
Yes.
If I go to, for example, any sort of 5-star hotel or a hotel in Mumbai and anywhere else, they said, "Do you want bottled water?" I said, "No, I don't. If I cannot be assured that you can give me safe drinking water, then I don't have a reason to eat here." And then sometimes people ask me that, look, what difference does that make? There are 56 billion bottles sold every day, or in a year's time. Sorry, not every day. I said it makes a difference of one bottle. So
Yes,
that's the kind of thinking one needs to have to say, look, by individual actions, positive or negative, there is an impact and an outcome. And one needs to realize that, actually, to say, look, how do you, in water, since we have discussed water, I think one of the core principles we have is make every drop count. And that applies to, as we discussed earlier, society which uses water, industry which uses water, agriculture which uses water.
Yes.
And it's a global problem. It doesn't stop with the borders. What you do impacts us. What we do impacts you. So I think this blame game, perhaps, that is going on may be a better idea to say, look, let's find solutions that benefit kind of all of us. I mean, I think the message is, if I were to say one thing, is that, look, we are in it together. We have collective interest, and some of these issues focus on what is called tragedy of the commons. That what is either everybody's problem is nobody's problem, and what says, look, you should do it, and I should do it, or they should do it, doesn't work. I think the question is, what can I do to make a difference? And if that's the starting point, solutions emerge.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, the whole reason I started this webcast was to communicate with people and get knowledge like yours out there to the general public, so people know what's going on, know that change is happening. It's slow, but it is getting there.
Sure.
And I love the fact that you do have a strong environmental background. I know you're being humble about it, but I have researched you, and you know more than you're saying you do. But what excites you the most out of what you're seeing every day right now?
There are multiple things. I could go on, and half an hour would not be enough. But let me focus on a few areas which clearly are quite exciting and interesting. One is, what excites us is the whole energy transition that is happening, and that is obviously that is grabbing headlines globally to say, look, we have to reduce GHG emissions. So when we talk about energy transition, effectively, and you look at global energy transitions that happened in Brazil, which moved towards biofuels, or France, which moved towards nuclear, or Denmark, which moved towards more wind, and Iceland to geothermal, one has to realize that in the presence of a threat, we all do what is best suited based on our needs and based on what is available to us. So energy transition is a very important goal. But in a country like India, since you mentioned India, one also has to balance that with energy inclusion. There are
Yep.
over 200 million people who are just about getting energy for the first time. So, effectively, you have to balance that with that. The third is energy security, which today we import 81% of our mobility related energy needs, which creates a lot of dependence, both in terms of price and availability. And globally, there is a thought on how do we create energy security. So while globally the net zero goals are 2050, for India, I think the government has said we should have 2070 because we have not even begun the process of getting the population sort of energized, no pun intended, but to see how we can get at least basic needs to people. So I
Yeah.
think there is a mix. And also when I talk about, energy and food and water interconnectivity, we have talked about hydrogen. So what excites us is what are the new technologies one can use? One is hydrogen.
Yes.
Second is biofuels, which clearly, kind of looking at some technologies that convert waste to energy. The third is grid storage, which is related to renewable energy, because as you have more renewable energy, you have what is technically called an intermittence issue, which means. So I think that and you can't use only minerals which are hard to find or hard to locate.
Yes.
You have to use what we use as a term called earth abundant minerals, as opposed to minerals which are effectively harder to get in
Rare earth
fewer
elements.
and in geopolitical areas which are difficult. So, in fact, a book I'm reading recently is called From Extraction to Extinction, which is a book I picked up at Oxford 2 weeks ago. But
Good
what
title.
people are talking about is the fact that how can we use or have resource efficiency and energy efficiency in terms of our actions? Nobody is saying that you reduce energy use to zero, because even if you talk about sustainable development or the objectives of sustainable development, they include economic growth, social justice, and environment respect. So the point
Yep.
is, India, when it grows, will have, as it builds its infrastructure, an increased need for energy. But there are so many opportunities to say, look, we are going to use this efficiently. And when we talk about clean power, a statement I make to students in class is that the cleanest form of energy is the energy you don't use. So please
Exactly.
shut the light when you leave the room. Just because you pay your bills doesn't make you a responsible user of energy. You have to make sure that resources available are used in a manner that is responsible.
All I can say right now is all I want to do is fly to India to hang out with you for a few days because everything you've said is everything I've been preaching for years. We cannot keep extracting everything from the earth and expect it to be a sustainable solution. We need energy diversification, every form of energy possible. I myself am a hydrogen person. Um, uh, there's so much that I am completely in line with what you just said. And I met somebody recently. He's in his mid-70s, and he said, "What do I care about sustainability? What could I possibly do? I'm going to be dead soon." And I simply said, "Consume less,
Yeah.
use less stuff, buy less things."
Right.
And he just said, "Really? That's it?" And I said, "That's all you really need to do. Stop buying stuff you don't need. Stop using stuff you don't need to use."
Correct.
Because he was trying to challenge me, like get a rise out of me, and I'm like, I'm not gonna fall into that. Just try to, and I love the fact that that is the best, simplest thing you can do because those small changes have big effect.
Yeah. At an
Um,
aggregate level, small changes can have significant impact, actually, for sure.
yes, absolutely. So now we've talked about what excites you. What concerns you? What are you worried about?
I would say two things. One is that there are still um, disbelievers that climate change is a risk, is an issue. And if we talk about planetary boundaries, we are actually reaching sort of some of them.
Yeah.
And then the non-linear effects that are caused when you breach these boundaries. If we look around and see what is the biodiversity loss that we have had, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
there are enough happenings globally where you talk about unseasonal floods, unseasonal rains, forest fires, melting glaciers, non-availability of water, groundwater levels depleting significantly. I mean, you don't have to effectively look too far. I mean, almost every few days you see some form of unseasonal aspect of what is being impacted. And when you impact nitrogen cycles, the water cycle, the ocean acidification, these have issues over a long term. And I think my concern is that it's sometimes becoming more political than saying that this is actually factual. There is no opinion here. This is actually something that effectively is out there. And since we have made some comments on water, I'll just use that to communicate what it applies to all other resources. Is to say that look, you appreciate the value of water when the well is dry, but when the well is dry, you can't begin to, I guess, start digging a well. I think the decisions have to be taken much before you reach that angle, reach that point.
Yeah.
So I think even among these planetary boundaries and other sort of broader aspects of climate risk, effectively taking measures today. And I think IFC has an interesting principle called avoid, mitigate, recompensate as a broad principle in terms of resource use. And applying these principles as an individual in personal life, as an individual, whether you are in a company, you're in policy making, you're in government, you're running your own business, and effectively overall as a member of society. I think it's one where effectively using resources responsibly, as you said, is an important factor. And you talked about consumption. So I think one comment to make is you can't outsource the emissions of consumption. Because if you take the concept of one world, and if you say, look, we are shutting down a factory in our neighborhood, but I'm actually going to increase consumption, but buy from overseas, which is, I think, perhaps the way some of the modern economy and sourcing and global economy has evolved. You are actually outsourcing pollution, I mean, in a way of speak. And a lot of the waste is managed by transporting it overseas. So you are just, it's called what is called passing the buck. It doesn't solve the issue, it just transfers it. And if you buy in the concept of one world, it comes back in form of climate change, which unfortunately doesn't respect gender, wealth, I mean, boundaries.
Yeah.
It's just we have a common world and one world. It's like that we need to sort of protect. I mean, I learned a lot from our advisory board. I should say we are honored to have a very strong advisory board whom I can rely on and benefit from their experience. I mean, we have, if I take a minute to just talk about some of the leaders who are in this field and who have chosen to work with us and get associated with us. The first I would mention is Erik Solheim, who was the head of United Nations Environment Program, and before that, Environment Minister of Norway. We have Sam Parker, who is based in London and headed Shell Foundation. We have an individual by the name of Pawan Sukhdev, who won or was awarded the Tyler Prize for the Environment in 2020, for which is considered the equivalent of the Nobel Prize. So these are some of the people who we have overseas. In India, we have Rajiv Mittal, who is today considered one of the experts on water globally. And we have other, from a governance standpoint, people who are like Vikram Limaya, who was the head of the stock exchange, who helps us with our corporate connects. Pradeep Shah, I could name a few more, but the comment is that we have been able to benefit. And part of what you attribute strength to me has been learned from association with these experts. I should have mentioned Subodh Kumar, who is also with 34 years of experience in energy. And conversations and effectively just spending the time, taking the effort. And I think the one comment I would make, Wendy, is for sustainability, you have to think deeply about issues. This is not a surface level problem that you can solve. And the more you spend time, the more I learn. I actually realize that there's so much I don't know. So while you're kind enough to say that I know a lot, I think the more you realize, the more you realize that there's so much more to learn about this space, which is complex. But we believe we have made a difference. But I would also say to you, Wendy, that our journey has just begun. There's just so much to do ahead of us. That is what excites me. And the concern, as you said, is that look, I mean, we are on our journey regardless. I mean, I'm not, if we get more money into the fund, we will invest more. But that doesn't mean that in the absence of people joining us, our journey is stalled. We are continuing on our path. We are trying to see what we can do. And Peak Sustainability Ventures is one way, but we are also doing work adjacent to it, which, as I said, is in terms of awareness through this MBA program, other associations, assisting the government in some of the, in India as well as overseas in some of the projects we have been working on. 2 weeks ago, we were meeting with, actually, I should have mentioned one other individual on our team is Professor Tim Palmer, who is a professor of climate at Oxford.
Oh,
I had
wow.
the opportunity to spend 3 hours with him 2 weeks ago at Oxford and with three other people at Oxford. And it's sort of, I would say, mind-blowing, the learning that you get. And
Yeah.
it makes you feel that, yes, I believe I know something, but I need to know a lot more. But within the knowledge that we have gained, we are trying to see, what we can do. And when we don't understand or we need more information, we have built this pool of experts whom we can rely on and who have been kind enough to work with us as we grow the business. So their association, gives us the ability to tap onto their expertise as and when needed, as we build our own over a period of time.
And you're absolutely right. We never stop learning. I never stop learning. When I first started, I mean, my background's a geologist, and I've worked in the environmental industry my whole life. And one of my old professors, a man named 𝒉𝒂𝒏𝒈, he's an Egyptian geologist, and he and I would sit down quite frequently, lunches, dinners, whatever, and we talk about energy. And this is like 90s. And you tell me about solar panels and, solar powered airplanes. I'm like, oh, no way, that's never going to happen. And just all the technology that he was discussing with people back then. And now, we're a little slow, but we're getting there.
Sure.
And we're getting to that renewable energy, and things are actually happening and scaling up with help from companies like yours who are providing the funding to get it done. And
Sure.
Can you talk about some of your specific fundings, people you've supported?
Sure. I think we have supported 17 plus companies. So I won't talk about the older companies, but rather mention them. That our first investment was in a company called 𝒂𝒑𝒔, which is today one of the top 4 leading companies in water globally.
Yeah.
And they are doing a project in Chennai, which is effectively almost a $500 million project supporting Greek clean water. But that's an older. Let me tell you what excites us today and our current investments. So we have invested in a company in Finland called 𝒍𝒊𝒏𝒈, which does wood modification. I sit on the board. In fact, I was there recently for a board meeting and meeting the company. But what we do is we modify wood in 3 different ways. One is to say, look, how can we do what is more closed loop recycling, that is, use wood for a better purpose than firewood. We can convert waste wood into furniture. Secondly, through this technology, which in the interest of time won't go into detail, but called TMTM, thermal modification and densification of wood technology, where we can give wood the same tensile strength of steel and the dimensional stability of cement. And it can be used as construction. I mean, there is a big movement globally called mass timber. And what is being talked about is that if you use steel and cement, which currently are the resources, they would be part of what is the linear economy, because iron ore and coke go into the making of steel, and limestone also has to be mined, and that goes into cement. So if you can do sustainable forestry, where you say, look, every 5 years I harvest the forest, but I don't do land use change, I will basically regrow the forest, then you are converting it into a circular resource. So that excites us quite a bit. Another company is Proion, which is working on plant-based protein. And the resource intensity of plant-based protein to cater to the needs of flexitarians or people who would prefer to move away from meat for various reasons. The resource intensity is almost 1/6 or 1/7 intense, and that's also something that excites us. There is a company that we are actually looking to work with, which is in solar, where we invested in 2015, a company called 𝒉𝒂𝒐 Energies, which today exports several $billion of panels to the United States, and that has grown tremendously and become sort of the single largest maker of panels. So change is happening in India as well,
Yeah.
and effectively, I think there is more to come. I mean, it's like watch the tape is what I would say. I think there is quite a lot of change, that quite a lot of new companies which we are on the verge of committing capital to. But I would prefer to speak about that, once the investments are done, actually, rather than before that. But quite excited about the fact that this problem, or what we talk about in terms of climate, also presents opportunities as we make the transition
Yeah.
from what has been a modern economy dominated by fossil fuels to what I would call a newer modern economy, where people are more conscious about effectively their consumption patterns, energy efficiency. And when you talk about energy efficiency, it's also water efficiency, just overall efficiency in use of resources, whether in terms of lifestyle as well as in terms of production, in terms of when you're looking at it from a company's angle, and policies that are also sort of in that direction. I mean, I recently came across a World Economic Forum report where they had taken a survey of younger students under 30 in about 100 countries, and they said, we will vote for a political party that is going to focus on climate,
Yep.
because we are going to inherit the world. And by your actions today, you are living a poorer world for us. Poorer, not maybe in terms of bank balances, but poorer in terms of resources, poorer in terms of quality of life, and poorer in terms of less biodiversity. So that's
Yeah.
what we care about. And I think we hope that that trend accelerates. So my fear is that that acceleration has to happen sooner rather than
Yes.
after we cross certain planetary boundaries, resulting in irreversible change.
It's interesting. One of the first conversations I had, he's works with a large construction firm, and I said, "How do we get people to care?" I mean, I'm going back many, many years, and I said, "How do we get people to care?" And he's like, "People will care when they can't breathe anymore," and that stuck with me because air pollution is a real thing in addition to water pollution. It really, that one hit me hard. And yes, we do need to change. We do need to accelerate these other alternative energy resources. Stop extracting. Stop leaving the planet worse off than we found it. And the Earth does rejuvenate. I mean, we saw that during COVID, when everything kind of shut down, the sky cleared up a little bit. It was fantastic. It's
Absolutely.
possible. And
Absolutely.
I know you're super busy and it's really late at night for you. So could you please tell people how they can find you and how they can engage with you and perhaps
Sure.
work with you?
Sure, absolutely. Before that, just to end this conversation on an optimistic note, I mean, I'm not a pessimist. I think I see a lot of opportunity and a lot of ways that, what we are talking about is not preordained. It can be prevented. But the point is, it's time for urgent action. If we kind of sit around, do nothing for a decade, then we'll have a problem. But I think if we, it's not too late to bend the curve, as they say, and to see how we can achieve positive outcomes. And to answer your question, look, I would be delighted to engage with like-minded people in multiple ways. It doesn't have to be only through the Peak Sustainability Fund. It can be through ways of association where, I say we want to learn from each other. While I do know a reasonable amount of the subject, I still say that what I don't know exceeds what I know. So happy to have conversations. You can reach me on my email ID, which is samir@peakventures.in. And I would love to connect with like-minded people who want to, discuss how we sort of bring about what I would call a better world.
Yeah. And that's all we ask is bring about a better world. Keep doing the right thing. I mean, some people, they get overwhelmed. It's like, just try to do the right thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
When you
all
get overwhelmed, take a deep breath and see what you can do, and I think making a positive difference is, I think, even the 70-year-old gentleman who you referred to earlier in the conversation can make a difference. It's every drop helps, or every small bit helps, actually.
And my tagline, no shaming, no blaming, every little bit helps.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Samir. This has been a wonderful conversation. We will see you guys soon. Open invitation to come back anytime you want, discuss more ventures that you guys are doing. But
Sure.
guys, I'm Wendy Nystrom, host Environmental Social Justice with Samir Shah. Peak Ventures, please check them out. Very important company. We'll see you guys later. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.